Today, we are talking about some absolutely fascinating new science that shows how menopause can literally reshape your brain. But more importantly, we're going to get into what you can actually do about it. So let's dive right in.
You ever have one of those days, where you feel a little more forgetful, maybe a bit more anxious than usual, and you just kind of write it off as, oh, it's just stress, or I had a bad day? Well, I'm here to tell you, it is not just in your head. And you are definitely not the only one feeling this way. Because some incredible new research is drawing a direct, scientific line between these very common feelings and one of the biggest transitions in a person's life, menopause. We are going to break down exactly what that connection is. So, when most people hear the word menopause, hot flashes are probably the first thing that jumps to mind, right? But the reality is, the experience is so much more than that. The cognitive and emotional symptoms are just as real and just as impactful. A lot of women talk about experiencing that frustrating brain fog, or new feelings of anxiety, maybe some depression, and definitely trouble sleeping. And these aren't just vague feelings. They are real, shared symptoms of this huge biological shift.
For the longest time, the exact reason why all this happens has been a bit of a medical puzzle. But that's all changing, and it's thanks to a massive new study that's finally giving us some solid answers.
So, what is really happening inside our heads during menopause? This new research gives us a pretty incredible look under the hood.
The key to all of this comes from something called the UK Biobank study. And we're talking about a mind-blowing amount of data here from nearly 125,000 women.
Within that massive group, scientists zoomed in on brain scans from over 11,000 people. This gave them this completely unprecedented chance to paint a really clear picture of what the menopausal brain actually looks like.
So, what did this landmark study really uncover? Come on, let's decode these results. Now, the way they did this was actually pretty clever. They split everyone into 3 groups to compare them. You had premenopausal women, who were basically the control group, then you had postmenopausal women who didn't use any hormone therapy, and finally postmenopausal women who did use it. This setup is so important for understanding what they found.
Okay, before we get to the big reveal, we need to talk about gray matter. Just think of it like your brain's main control center. It's absolutely essential for pretty much everything you do. Thinking, remembering, feeling, even just moving around. It's the whole shebang. All right, you ready? Here's the headline finding. The brain scan showed real, noticeable reductions in the amount of gray matter in postmenopausal women. The big takeaway here is that menopause itself is tied to a physical change in the brain, which finally helps explain some of those symptoms we mentioned. And these changes weren't just random. Nope. They were focused in 3 really important areas. First, the hippocampus. That's your memory hub. Makes a lot of sense with the brain fog, right? Then the entorhinal cortex, which is like an information gateway. And finally, the anterior cingulate cortex, which helps you focus and keep your emotions in check. It's a direct line from physical brain changes to those feelings of forgetfulness and anxiety. Okay, now this is where the plot really thickens. What about hormone replacement therapy, or HRT? What did the study find there? Because the results, they might just surprise you. So this leads us to the million-dollar question, right? If shifting hormones are causing these changes in the brain, then taking hormone therapy, that should protect you from them, shouldn't it? Well, the answer turned out to be really complex. First off, the HRT did not stop the gray matter from shrinking. And then there were some other pretty strange findings. Women on HRT actually reported higher anxiety, though it was about the same as premenopause levels, and they reported feeling the most tired out of all 3 groups, even though they were sleeping just as much. So what on earth is going on here? Well, the researchers are really quick to say, hey, this is not the final word on HRT. A huge reason is that the study couldn't track things like dosage or a person's actual hormone levels, which makes a huge difference. What this all suggests is that HRT's job might just be a lot more complicated than we thought. Maybe it helps with certain symptoms, like reaction times, but doesn't stop those underlying brain changes. It just goes to show how much we need a more personalized approach. All right, now for the most important part of this whole thing. Knowing all this, what can you actually do? Let's switch gears from the problem to the solutions, because trust me, you have way more power here than you might think. Here is the fantastic news. Your brain is not some static thing that just declines over time. Not at all. It is incredibly adaptable. You can actively support its health and build what scientists call cognitive resilience. You can literally help it adapt and rewire itself. And here's the playbook.
The study's co-author, a Dr. Sahakian, lays out 5 powerful, totally doable steps. Exercising regularly, eating a healthy diet, getting 7 to 8 hours of good quality sleep, keeping up with your friends and family, and, this one's critical, keeping your mind active by always learning new things.
Let's just double-click on that sleep one for a second. Because as Dr. Sahakian puts it, sleep isn't just about resting, it's an active duty time for your brain. It's when it locks in memories and literally power washes toxic waste out of there. It is absolutely non-negotiable for brain health.
And finally, maybe the most important takeaway of all, this is not something you have to figure out on your own. Please, do not suffer in silence. Talk to your doctor, talk to a specialist about your symptoms, and figure out what options are available to you.
So let's just reframe this whole conversation. Menopause is not an endpoint for your brain's health, not even close. It's a change point, and your brain has this amazing built-in power to adapt to that change.
The science gives us the roadmap. It shows us what's happening and what we can do to build up our own cognitive resilience. So, the only question left to ask is, how will you help your brain rewire?